Hello everyone, hope you are well. Welcome to another episode of Monday Markets brought to you by the FTX app. We have with us the BTC USD monthly timeframe chart. Not a lot has changed, as you can tell. Still unwinding from the bearish retest of resistance at 43 to 47. And for me, the only real level that I like structurally is the monthly support at 35 to 37. The argument is rather clear. You know, the monthly time frame has just been so precise and so helpful in timing a lot of these rotations. I don't really see a compelling reason to move away from it. And that sort of speaks for itself. Even if we look at lower time frame structures like the weekly, there isn't a ton to write home about in terms of, you know, nearby structure. Take this consolidation from February to March. These really small bodied choppy candles don't really do much for me. And then, if the market starts to rally, you might be inclined to argue, well, look, there's a very clear weekly cluster at 43K or thereabouts, the one in the newsletter and the one Don pointed out. And I agree that's a technical valid structure, but at the same time, if you look just above it, that area is more or less covered by the monthly time frame as well, with the mid-range resistance at 44 to 47. So I don't see a ton of value in just stacking levels on top of levels, especially given the volatility has been quite slow. So really, it's most of my time when I check the charts nowadays, it's spent looking at this to see where we are relative to the levels which are most attractive to me. And in the absence of the market trading around, through, or near these levels, I don't really look for swing trades, and my directional bias is going to be quite flat. That's the area I want to trade. If it's not there, I don't want to trade. Fairly straightforward. As we discussed, this ugly-looking failed breakout is continuing to unwind. I don't really, just like the weekly time frame is a bit meh in terms of structure until the monthly time frame is reached. I feel the same way about the daily. If you look at just this area here in general, this weird pump and dumpy consolidation we traded in before moving up, I don't see a ton of compelling support structures there, not at least for me. You could start drawing stuff, but it wouldn't be compelling. The only exception that I could potentially see is if the market pukes through what looks like an important range or an important low, as it's kind of attempting to do now, right? If we take very recent price action. So the market, puking through this low or puking through just the candle close in general, this type of area, and then managing to stay above it, maybe there's a kind of mid-term range trade from that failed breakdown into, at the very least, the high, if not the range high, if not the high itself. That's kind of the best I can do in terms of interim patterns for the market right now. But really, even if you just eyeball this, right, you've got a monthly resistance up here, you've got monthly support down here, and the market is kind of in the middle of those areas, and that's where this consolidation is. So it's kind of the, as they say, don't diddle in the middle. Maybe there's something tradable on these tentative lower time frame structures away from higher time frame structure, but really it's not for me at this stage. So that's kind of some intraday commentary, but really it all comes back to the monthly time frame, and that's going to be my guiding light, if you will, for the coming days and weeks, until such a time that the weekly and daily kind of start to offer something unique and clear on their own, and I don't think the market's quite there yet. And as I said, the monthly's been so good to us, why give it up? Quick look over at Ethereum. This was kind of the poster child for strength, potentially, on the weekly time frame. As the market started to move lower, this was the one chart which didn't look absolutely awful, and that was on account of a retest of an area of support closer to the 3,000 round number. If you want to use this close to delineate it or whatever else, you can kind of see a rather self-explanatory inflection point, previous lows, highs, etc. And it looks like the market lost that support given it closed through it. And there really isn't much else I'm fond of in terms of technical structure that could make for a compelling higher low. To me, if the market stays below 3,000, then at that point, the bottom is fairly vulnerable. It's at the moment it appears to have failed its best kind of bullish retest scenario, and it's a failed breakout in its own regard. I'm kind of meh on that. The exception, of course, would be a kind of close below, close above bullish type of pattern, which we've discussed on the channel before, not below, no, that's not a word. A clean double close, whatever you want to call it, right? So you say have a weekly close through support, and then if this week were to close, let's say, above it, you could make a case that the price action we're seeing right now was a failed breakdown, and indeed that could be a catalyst to move higher. Maybe that's cope, but in any case, in terms of, it's fine to engage the counterfactual and be aware that strength back above 3,000, at least on a daily, if not weekly basis, would be decent. But in terms of purely dealing with what's in front of us, we had a big level, and the market closed through the big level, and it's currently low. that big level. So not much to write home about. And again, similar to BTC, there wasn't much in the form of structure in this consolidation that really makes me jump at it in terms of compelling higher lows. I think 3,000 is the compelling higher low, so that needs to turn to support in order for the chart to look constructive. Otherwise, even just kind of eye test this type of stuff, it's below a lot of these breakout points, key levels, whatever you want to call them. It needs to fix that, right? Let's say a daily or a weekly back above. Maybe then there's a trade available from 3,000, which will have then turned to support towards resistance at 35, 3,600, something like that. But at the moment, the market's poking below the range low. If that's going to be bullish, that needs to get soaked up and actually reclaim structure. And then we have a clear trade with a clearer invalidation. But at the moment, that's not what we're dealing with. Something to watch out for sure. Especially given it's relatively early in the week, right? So this could be the weekly wick, reclaim structure, and then move up. If that's what's available to us, it still needs to show its hand a little bit more than it is at the moment. Not much interesting me on the altcoin front. Taking a quick look at AVAX. Structurally, again, this failed breakout attempt at 87, and since then, red weekly and not at levels that I find particularly compelling. In terms of Luna, I still believe that your clearest signal, at least for bullish continuation, will come on the weekly close back above 100 if the market makes that available. Otherwise, this looks like one of those, basically BTC at 60K, right? All-time high breakout, gets completely engulfed, and market moves lower towards the range low, if not the range midpoint. For me, the midpoint in the first area of support is around 60, and then the range low, fairly self-explanatory, closer to the 40 to 50 lows. For the time being, this rally isn't something I can do anything about. I think the clear level is 100, and then other clear levels are lower. So just bear that in mind. For the time being, not willing to buy this early, given the weekly time frames has posted a failed breakout, which, one of the weakest crypto patterns, or at least, one of the clearly bearish crypto patterns that both come with attractive targets to buy and also clear invalidations, right? And diddling in the middle, once that type of structure is formed, just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Solana still chopping around the 100 mark. Not much to say there. I asked Don whether for the newsletter he wanted to add this as a kind of interim level of resistance, closer to, what is that? 110, 115 or thereabouts. I think it's okay. I'm not hugely fond of it. Big picture, if you look at Solana on the weekly, it bounced from daily support into weekly resistance. And if you take that as our short-term trading range, right, so weekly support and daily resistance between 135 and 80, right, to steal some SZ arrows. If this is the range we're dealing with, the market is currently almost slap bang in the middle of that range. So really a kind of the no trade zones of all no trade zones, right? If it nukes, maybe there's some sort of, sweep play to be had from 70 to 80. The real weekly structures where it starts to get really scary, but also just technically more sensible, is the previous range between mid-20s and 50 or thereabouts. So the clearer trades are either going to come from strength, which is to say reclaim the all-important weekly at 35, and then there's a range high trade available, or the market just needs to go lower to become cheap enough to be attractive. There's a clear range, 135 to 80-ish, and it's in the middle, so there's not much to do. So yeah, that's kind of the summary for this week. I mean, obviously legacy markets are waking from their weekend slumber. I think the correlations are still very much intact, so that's very much out of our control. More kind of Walter Bloomberg headlines and boomers trading the market, which will affect us, no doubt. BTC and ETH had a chance to show weekly time frame strength, but not super interested in either until they reach levels that I like. For BTC, that's the monthly time frame, which is really attractive, and I don't want to step in front of anything which isn't visible on the monthly time frame, and history has shown that to be a good decision thus far. Excuse me, voice crack. Gonna hit puberty soon at this rate. And for ETH, again, the chance to show strength is above 3,000. It closed below, so meh. Maybe we get an early wick in the week, and then this ends up being some sort of failed breakdown reclaim. That would be cool. So eyes out for strength back above 3,000. But obviously I can't foresee that at the moment, given it's below. So only once that becomes available does that idea land on the table, and then we can talk about it. Something to watch out for, though. On the altcoin front, as I said, Luna was, the strongest one today, and also just in general narratively quite compelling. Weekly failed breakout. That needs to be fixed. I don't want to be the one trying to catch the bottom of that kind of weekly pattern, and everything else is just kind of meh. So more boomer watch, more market watch for, Walter and whatever the 100-year-olds that run the world want to do with this. That's all from me. Hope you had an excellent weekend, and make sure to subscribe to trletter.com to get tomorrow's newsletter. Take care. Bye-bye.